Hi everyone, Olivia Reiner here for Packers News, joined by Ryan Wood. And today we're getting better
Thursday.
at the calendar dates.
Thursday?
I say as it escapes me. It is Thursday, right? It's Thursday.
I had to think about it. I really did.
It is. It's Thursday, and it's Thursday in the Packers week. We're back on a somewhat normal schedule now. The Packers actually practiced today, so we got to see them out on the field in action. It wasn't just a walkthrough like yesterday was. So we have lots to discuss regarding who practiced, who didn't practice. I'm sure a lot of you Packers fans, if you don't know, you're going to want to know because there were some new faces, and there were some faces that you probably would have liked to have seen practice, but they didn't practice.
But before we do that, and she's going to hate me for doing this. She's known that this is coming. I got to say, folks, this is red. It's not Flyer orange. It's not Flyer orange.
I will say.
It's Elmo red, okay? Can we just agree on this here?
If you look, Ryan, look in the monitor right now. It looks a little orange in the light.
It does not. This is red, and if you don't think so, you're all dead to me. That's
all right.
It's not true.
All right. Well, listen here, folks. I am never going to say a nice thing to Ryan ever again because yesterday I said, oh, I like your Flyer orange pullover. I liked it. That was really it. That's all I was getting. It's a good color.
Here's the thing. I legit have a hard time telling the difference between black and, like, dark navy. So, like, I didn't need another color that I had no idea. You had me legit, like freaking out, like, oh, my God, I don't know the difference between red and orange. This is a real that's a problem.
For those of you who do not know the backstory, over on Twitter, Ryan decided to go ruffle some fetters by posting
that sometimes
or retweeting the link that the Packers News, or I think Tom Silverstein tweeted out the link to our live stream highlight over on the Packers News website, and he polled the people whether or not the pullover was red or orange.
I think you won in a landslide, too. I think it's like 85% orange, and it is not orange. You saw it. It's red. Green Bay Packers.
I think, yes. Oh, we're moving on already. Well, I was going to continue on by saying in the lighting, it did look orange, but out in the natural light here at Lambeau Field,
it's a red pullover.
It looks red. Yeah, I guess.
It reminds me of Elmo. I don't know why Elmo comes to mind, but it does.
Josh says it's definitely red. Mike says it's red. Tim says it's red.
I'm not crazy. Oh. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Dean says it's Red Wings red, which
ooh,
very, very
Can
nice.
it be Blackhawk red?
I guess Blackhawks red and Red Wings red are very similar. So,
okay. But
Red Wings fans do not like Blackhawks fans and vice versa. So.
Well, we know this. So I don't know anything about hockey. I'm sorry, Wisconsinites. I am one of you. I pay property taxes. I don't know anything about hockey. We on our flight to Dallas, how many did I get? Like 26 hockey teams?
Ryan and I, off of memory, decided to list all of the teams.
We were real bored.
I guess you did. You did, and I.
Yeah. Well, you know him. You know him.
Yeah.
She's a big hockey. Yeah.
He did really well. He did really well. Okay. We're gonna move on now.
Back on topic.
Nobody cares is the summation of this. Thank you guys for engaging in our weirdness. But let's talk about practice today. So, the good news, why don't we start with that? So, Ibrahim Campbell, safety who was on PUP, is technically still on PUP, returned to practice.
Yep.
The Packers have 3 weeks to make a decision about what they want to do with him. They need to either, take him off or get rid of him. They need to make a decision. But in theory, they could decide that he's coming back this week. Mm-hmm. So, that's the status on Campbell. Jace Sternberger, tight end, also returned to practice. He had been on IR. With Sternberger, it's a little bit different. He can return after week 8, and the Packers also have a 3-week window to make a decision with him, but he needs to wait a couple more weeks before he comes back. So that's the lowdown there. Also worth noting that wide receiver Ryan Grant practiced for the first time with the team today. The Packers picked him up just the other day off of waivers. So he made a return. We talked yesterday extensively about how much of an impact he could make right away. And we talked to coaches today. We talked to Nathaniel Hackett today about Ryan Grant. And everyone admitted, even Devontae Adams spoke about Ryan Grant. Everyone admitted it's not going to be an easy transition at this point in the season for him to get out on the field and make an immediate impact. I would assume, listen, I don't know exactly if he's going to be playing a lot of offensive snaps, if he's going to be playing any offensive snaps, but I would assume that there are certain basic things that they can use him in this upcoming week. They don't really have a choice.
Few things. Yeah, and we'll see if they have a choice because every day we go out to practice, and we got the roster in one hand and a pen in the other, and we're taking attendance. And I will tell you that there is a large swath of players in the 80s that they're out. Jimmy Graham, Geronimo Allison, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and then Devontae Adams, 17. They didn't practice today, so they might that depends. I mean, that determines in some aspect how much they're going to play Ryan Grant. He's not just a familiar name; he's wearing a familiar number 11. Kind of looked like a bigger, not big, but a bigger Trevor Davis a little bit in that 11 jersey that Trevor Davis used to wear. I think he's going to be active. I think that he's going to play some. I don't know how much.
Mm-hmm. So another 80 that did not practice today was Robert Tonyan, who was listed yesterday on the injury report as being limited. The Packers didn't practice again yesterday. There was a walkthrough, so he didn't actually practice. It was interesting. So if you look at the injury report today, there were at least 4 guys on there who were downgraded after yesterday's estimation. So Tramon Williams was downgraded. He did not practice. Kevin King was downgraded. I think he was limited today. Was he out there? I don't think he was.
He was out there.
He was out there. So he was limited in practice today. Kenny Clark did not practice today either. I think I'm forgetting one more person off the top of my head.
The 2 that I knew were Tramon Williams and Kenny Clark. But the big thing with both of those guys, Tramon Williams, it's a knee. Kenny Clark, it's 2 things. It's like a calf and back or something. What is it? Back is one of them.
It is calf and back.
Calf and back. That's what I said. Wow. Those guys, I mean, Mike Pettin was pretty clear that it's not alarming for either of those guys that it sure sounded like he expects them to both play. He said with Tramon Williams, I mean, it reminds me a lot of Julius Peppers. I mean, he's a guy that just plays so late into his 30s at a demanding position, and he just never breaks down. He said you kind of got to save him from himself sometimes. So that's kind of what they're doing. I mean, it's a knee on the injury report, but kind of like veteran rest. I'd expect both Tramon Williams and Kenny Clark to be out there Sunday.
So that was all 4 of them. That was Kenny Clark, Kevin King, Robert Tonyan, and Tramon Williams were the 4 that were downgraded from yesterday.
I can't count, so.
I can't, apparently not. I can't either. Brian Balaga was limited today. That was just veteran rest, so I would not assume there's any cause for concern there. He's been doing that throughout the season, and it's working out well for him. Let me tell you that. It is working out
well for him. He's played pretty well.
So we said Devontae Adams, Geronimo, but going back to the 80s, so Robert Tonyan didn't practice. So that means that the only healthy tight ends right now that the Packers have are Mercedes Lewis, Jace Sternberger, who hasn't practiced.
Not on the active roster, still in IR.
Exactly, and Evan Bayless, who the Packers have been throwing around between practice squad and active roster.
Well, they need pass catchers. There's no question about that. That's why I think Ryan Grant's going to play a little bit because, Jake Kumaro they have. Alan Lazard's going to play this week. There's no question about that. They're going to see if Alan Lazard can double down on what he did in the fourth quarter on Monday and do it more than once. And then Darius Shepard, who you got to think twice before playing him a lot at this point with how Monday went. So it's rough. It's rough there.
He needs to have a big rebound for sure, Darius Shepard. If he wants to get his confidence back, he needs something to get him going.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, we talk about the Packers needing receivers. Shepard was the one during individual drills leading off some of them, which says a lot considering that's sort of the state of what the Packers receiving corps is right now.
The word is depleted. They're pretty depleted there.
Yes, absolutely. So let's take a look at some of your questions. Jim wants to know, are the Packers going to activate Dexter Williams this week? Both Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams are healthy. Would you expect them to carry a third running back? I mean, even you could argue a fourth guy in addition to Danny Vitale.
I would not. They haven't done it yet. I wouldn't expect until they do it. And Trey Carson, by the way, got claimed on waivers by the Detroit Lions. His time in Green Bay is done. It's the risk that Brian Gutekunst ran when he released him to add Ryan Grant to the roster. And it's not surprising that they went that way because they believe Dexter Williams' talent long-term is important to have on this roster, but he hasn't. They have not seemed to indicate that they believe that he's ready to play. I wouldn't expect that to change.
It's also not much of a surprise that Trey Carson got claimed for Brian Gutekunst, who added a running back to the practice squad when they ended up releasing Trey Carson. So I don't think he was
necessarily. The writing was on the wall.
Yeah, and if you're Trey Carson, you're probably like, man.
Let's try to do this somewhere else where I could stay on the 53. Yeah.
I look at what I just did for you.
Yeah.
And like, go find an opportunity, go get playing time somewhere else at this point, right? Mike and Jim, again, both ask, hey, is this an opportunity for Danny Vitale, fullback? Matt LaFleur wasn't super forthcoming about how much more he wanted to use Danny Vitale, at least as a receiver, because he was asked about that earlier in the week. Do you expect to see the Packers use him as a receiver? We've seen that he's capable of doing that more, at least in the preseason and some of the earlier games.
He had a big 27-yard catch this year, and then that's the only time pretty much. Yeah, he might have had a carry in that game too, but he's touched it very sparingly. I don't expect it until it happens. I mean, I would think at some point they would. I mean, he's an athletic guy. He's intriguing. They haven't done it.
Jason wants to know, and I'm sure some of the other guys of you, ones of you, excuse me.
The folks.
Everybody
the folks
in here.
Talking to us.
We get a lot of questions about Jimmy Graham, and usually not even questions. They're just kind of like, Jimmy Graham. But Jason does ask a question. He asks, what's the word on Jimmy Graham? How can the Packers get him more involved? And then he goes on to add, in his opinion, that he's looking like more of a small bust for the amount that he signed for just
small bust?
a year ago.
Small?
Yeah, it's not
small?
looking good. No, and
like small?
How small is small, I guess. Maybe
he has the top cap hit in the league at his position. He's got to do more. No question about it. That's not a small. I mean, top cap hit in the league at tight end. There's pretty good tight ends in this league. He's, how do they get more involved? Catch the football. He was in the end zone right there, in that corner end zone right there, and had a touchdown and dropped it. Would love to speak with him about that, but he hasn't talked all year.
Yeah.
Just
to clarify on that, because I know we've mentioned that in the past that Jimmy Graham hasn't talked to. I know Ryan has said that before, but it's not just he doesn't talk to Ryan. He doesn't talk to anybody. So,
and it's in his contract that he's supposed to. It's in every NFL player's contract, and every other NFL player in that locker room has done the professional thing and talked. They've all done it. Jimmy Graham has not.
Yeah, no, it's just hard. We have questions.
You
guys have questions, right?
Yeah.
So it's disappointing that we haven't been able to ask him questions. We've had to ask his coaches questions. We ask his teammates about Jimmy Graham, but Jimmy Graham can't answer the questions for himself. So that's just some intel background, because I've seen or at least comments at Ryan being like, "Oh, well, you don't hold a grudge against him if he isn't."
I don't hold any grudge against. I mean, that's his job, part of his job, and he hasn't done that either. And the other part of his job is catching balls that are thrown to him. He hasn't done that either. So, no grudge. I mean, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. It's his prerogative because it's his job. Every other guy in that locker room, there's been some guys in that locker room who have faced the music after some really tough moments. Not so many this year. They're 5-1. They've been playing. There've been a few tough moments this year, but I'm talking years past. Some really tough moments. Mason Crosby misses 4 field goals in Detroit. The point differential would have been enough to give them a win, and he stayed and answered every single one of those questions. I mean, that's what being a pro is. So
we digress, but yes, important background information just to give you guys some context. So, on that note, by the way, whoever just asked the question, it was Jason. He was being nice when he said the word small, but he meant big. We got you, Jason.
That was very nice of you.
But that being said, so at what point do the Packers need to realize what they have with Jimmy Graham and be realistic about it? Is it something that they will not own up to it and they'll keep him for the rest of the season and they will cross their fingers that something works out and that something clicks? Or at some point this season, do they need to move on from him?
I don't see them moving on. Here's a big thing. He is a big, even though he hasn't talked to the media and even though he hasn't produced on the field, he is a big part of the locker room culture as a veteran guy. He's very good friends with Aaron Rodgers. They're 5-1. I don't see them disrupting the chemistry with a move that big when things are going well. So I don't think they're going to cut him, but diminish his playing time, those sort of things. I mean, I don't think they're there yet. I think they still need to try to get something out of Jimmy Graham. But that point could come at some point if they don't.
Mm-hmm. We have been getting this question quite a bit. We'll keep answering it. Lorenzo wants to know, will the Packers trade for a wide receiver or sign one? They just did sign one, but will they trade for a bigger named, are they willing to put the resources on the table to go get somebody? But I would assume it's probably not this week.
If he warrants those resources, then yes, I don't think they hesitate to make that move. It's just a matter of finding a guy that warrants those resources that another team is willing to trade, and that's the question. I mean, you can't do a trade without a partner.
This is true.
They got to find one.
Brian Gutekunst is not shy when it comes to making those deals, for sure.
He's an aggressive. He takes an aggressive approach to the roster.
Josh, going back to our Jimmy Graham talk briefly, he asks or puts out there, I thought you get fined if you don't talk to the media. You do get fined, and he's willing to take the fine apparently. So that is that. Let's see. Tim says that the Packers need to work that run game more like they did 2 weeks ago. I mean, Aaron Jones was just really hot 2 weeks ago. Jamal Williams, I think, got hot.
Yeah, then he got the hot hand, yeah.
Yeah, obviously not to the same level. I don't know if they'll ever be able to get to 4 rushing touchdowns in a single game. I'm sure they'd like to, but it is a lot. It's hard to stay consistent there. But Nathaniel Hackett was asked about this today during media availability. How do you decide which running back to commit to? How do you know which one's going to get hot at the right time?
Hey, who asked that question? I did.
It was Ryan. So
yeah.
What did you make of what he thought?
It's more of a rhythm thing than it is any singular moment. What I was wondering was there a run where he clicked in and was like, oh, he looks really good today? And it's more of a rhythm thing, and it kind of crescendos and it builds momentum. Nathaniel Hackett said that there were some 5-yard runs that he got early that looked really good. And think back to the game, that was, his direct cutting style, running style downhill was getting those 5-yard gains. And so when you're getting that, and Nathaniel Hackett, I believe it was him that said, a coach told him once that if you get a 4-yard gain on a run it again. Those are good plays. So they did that, and he got another 5 yards, and they got another 5. So, and then obviously the play at the end of the half where he had the 46-yarder, his career long, that was when it was really going good at that point. But it kind of, it's not just a 0 to 60 thing. It kind of builds and builds, and especially early for a running back.
Yep, and Jason adds in that the O-line, when it's healthy, has been really good and has helped out Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams quite a bit, and I would agree with that. I think the offensive line has obviously been playing very well, both in the run and in the pass game too, protecting Aaron Rodgers.
Yes, absolutely.
So anyway, guys, one more practice tomorrow. Like we said, there are a number of faces who have not returned to practice, so just because they don't practice, that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be active on Sunday, as we learned with Kevin King just a couple weeks ago, who didn't practice all week, went from being doubtful to questionable to playing in the game and playing really well. So who knows what's going to happen, but we'll let you know when we find out, won't we, Ryan?
We will. That's what we do.
That's our job. So Ryan will not be here tomorrow. We'll miss you, Ryan. I won't be able to compliment you on whatever color clothing you're wearing or whatever.
Or get the wrong color. Get the wrong color.
Apparently. Did you know? Well, you probably did, but more the color blindness is a gene found on X chromosomes primarily, right? So more men are colorblind than women. So I can't.
That's why I'm freaked out, and I pretty much am colorblind for black and navy. I cannot at all tell the difference between those two.
So so I don't listen. The lighting, it's all good now. We're good. We've made up. We'll move on. Everything will be okay. I will just never compliment you ever again. So that's what I learned from that.
Which is no different than any other time. That's no different, but okay, go ahead.
All right. Anyway, Jim and I will be back tomorrow after practice and locker room to chat with you guys. Make sure you're heading on over to PackersNews.com for all of your Packers coverage. Follow us on social media as well for lots of updates. And hey, if you're hanging at home before the game on Sunday, make sure you turn us back on over on all of our social media channels. Pete and I always preview the game, and then Ryan and I will be on after the game to wrap it up. So it's the same stuff, different week. We do it all. It's all the same, but hopefully you guys enjoy it. Anyway, that's about it. Ryan, last words?
Have fun.